the woman of the decade. Great to have you, Halle.
Hello. Hi.
Awesome.
I
We're
love
so
Halle,
glad.
how it started out with the woman of the hour, and you already in the first introduction line becomes of the decade. So this is off to a good start.
That's a little too generous, but thank you.
Well, we're so glad you're here. I'm going to just do our little
Likewise.
intro. I'm so glad you're here. We are recording, so just you, Halle, are you okay? You're fine again that we are recording this session, correct?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, awesome. So, welcome to the MedStarter Healthcare Innovators. We are an inclusive, diverse community bringing all the necessary stakeholders, patients, physicians, payers, disruptors, all to make healthcare better. We're excited today to have Halle Tecco on our weekly show today, The Startup Struggle, hosted by MedStarter Healthcare Innovators. Halle Tecco is the founder and chief women's health officer of Natalist and a proud IVF mama. Previously, she was the founder of early-stage digital health venture Rock Health and an adjunct professor at Columbia Business School. Halle started her career working in finance and business development roles at Intel and Apple. She is currently an advisor to the Harvard Medical School Department of Biomedical Informatics and is a board director at the International African American Museum. Halle has appeared in New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and CNBC. She was named as one of the Goldman Sachs most intriguing entrepreneurs and listed on the Forbes 30 under 30. She received her MBA from Harvard Business School and an MPH from Johns Hopkins with a concentration in women's and reproductive health. Today we are fortunate to hear from Halle in her digital health entrepreneur journey from founder, VC, and back to founder and CEO. Her perspective provides a robust insight into the startup struggles both inside and out, as well as all the successes. Our goal today is to provide our audience an opportunity to learn more about what it is like as a CEO founder and their journey in this intimate setting. In the second half of our show, we will bring up guests from the audience for questions. So please begin to think of one question you would like to ask Halle. And now I'd like to introduce my partner in crime to my right, Meta, and that's Meta Diver. She is a founder and CEO of Mimi, a digital health company that empowers those with autoimmune disease back to health. So no more powerful and better than founder to founder to begin engaging in this intimate journey.
Thank you so much, Michael, and thanks for joining us here, Halle. I think first and foremost, I think anyone who start companies based on sort of their own journeys always have an interesting story behind how did it all come about, and you've, because of your incredible resume up until date, gotten a lot of attention, and probably there's a lot of people in the room that know your story, but maybe you can start by introducing sort of why is Natalist what you're passionate about today, and what was your journey in?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me. It's fun to be here at Clubhouse, and I'm looking forward to kind of diving into the startup struggle. I didn't know if this was the name of your ongoing session or if you thought that I had some insights on struggling, which I do.
I could show me a founder that don't have insights.
Yeah, right. You get a PhD in the struggle. But that's actually where my journey to start Natalist really began, from my own struggle personally. So I had career-wise, everything was going swell in my life. But when my husband and I tried to, start having a family 7 years ago, we ran into major obstacles. It took us 4 years and a lot of science to have my now 3.5-year-old son. And it has been, a struggle that we're currently in for number 2. But really, I didn't want to become a founder. Being an investor is so much easier. Anyone in this room that has been on either side knows that. but I really feel like this path was kind of put in front of me for a reason. And I, at first, just recognized within women's health through my own trying to get pregnant was really my first touch point with the healthcare system in a meaningful way. And so I had worked in healthcare, but I didn't have kind of that first person experience that a lot of people, get for various reasons. For me, my first foray was infertility and trying to understand why my reproductive system wasn't working. And so I dug deep into women's health as an investor. So started really looking at a lot of companies in the space and just realized there was a large opportunity, and that most of the funding in venture capital was not going to women's health. And so as an investor, I invested in a couple of companies in this space, such as Kind Body, which is women's health, Wildflower Health, which was through Rock Health, and was trying to find something that was really developing kind of direct-to-consumer experiences and products. And so, long story short, I tried to find someone else to do it because I just wanted to invest, but no one was doing it. So I had no choice but to start the company, which was a difficult decision, but it was one fueled by a passion for women's health, and that's kind of how things got started. And we've kind of since built a team of other women who have kind of their own journeys to motherhood. And so we each bring a unique perspective. And what we believe is our key differentiator is we're on a shelf in retail that is dominated by very large, old school CPG companies that aren't bringing the empathy that we think women deserve during this time. So that's kind of where we differentiate, is that we're moms. We've been there. We get it.
No, and it also struck me when you check you out on LinkedIn that you are Chief Women's Health Officer. I love that you snuck that in there, because I think so often as we are going on these journeys, it becomes talk that doesn't necessarily actually gets executed, right? But if it actually is verbalized, if it's something that every person in the company is sort of embodying, then it's very hard to take that out of the DNA. And I think, the journeys are only as grand as the visions that we have for them. So I think to a large extent, when we are sort of taking these endeavors, it has to be, like you say, it's almost like, I always say that you should only start a company in the same fashion as you should only have a child, where there's literally nothing that can stop you. You just must have a child or a baby in your arms. And in a way, it's the same with companies, because they demand all of your attention. It's all of that requirement. And unless you're willing to give up your entire personal life for at least a period of time, it's not the right fit. So it sounds like in this case, you not only found a major obstacle through your own struggles, but you also ended up using your background as an investor to really sort of wrap your arms around a space that have really been antiquated in many ways. It was interesting as a consumer, because I remember when Natalis came out, it was like, are they going to sell products? Like, what is the vision of where you are going? How far do you feel like today you are in terms of where you saw this company going in terms of steps in that direction?
Yeah, so, and I'm sure there are people in this room who don't know Natalis, so I guess I'll say a little bit more about what we do. So the vision for Natalis was to really create millennial-friendly products, physical products that help during the fertility and pregnancy journey, and really have all the products under one brand. So from my experience, I had to go to various aisles at the drugstore to kind of figure out what I needed. And this includes, ovulation tests, pregnancy tests. There's something called fertility lubricant, which is actually FDA cleared specifically for use to not harm sperm during sex so that you can get pregnant. Prenatal vitamins, and then if you're someone who has a specific condition, like me, which right now my condition is just advanced maternal age. I'm over 35. So I also take an egg quality supplement. CoQ10 is the one I'm currently taking. And so all these products kind of were under different brands that were very disconnected, but they all kind of serve the same purpose, which is to help someone get pregnant and carry a healthy pregnancy. So we built this company across supplements and medical devices, which really hadn't been done in this space before. And so we have now a collection of at least a dozen products, and our biggest strategy is really to provide these products to women during their preconception period, and our products are on sale online, but we also are expanding greatly in retail. So last year, around this time, we launched in Target. That was our first retail partner. We launched in 300 stores, and this year we're growing to 6,500 stores, Target, and we have 3 other retailers that have signed on with us. So tremendous growth for us in retail. But obviously we're omnichannel. It's important for any CPG brand today to be kind of where your customer needs you. And so if someone needs us quickly to, on Amazon, we're on Amazon. If they need us, at the store, we're at the store. So that's kind of where Natalist is. And then in my role as Chief Women's Health Officer, so I started as CEO, and then I don't want to say demoted, because I think this role is a better role, at least for me. So I promoted myself to Chief Women's Health Officer, and our COO became our CEO. And it just made sense for us as a company and what our strengths were. For me, I still think more like an investor. And so my job is really to understand where our customers need us the most and help with product development and strategy, and marketing and customer support. It's really, I'm less of a people manager and more of, which direction should we steer the ship? And so that's kind of what my focus is as the Chief Women's Health Officer. And it's great because I'm able to kind of, on certain days, I'm diving deep into the research to understand, what we know about certain conditions and how we can help women overcome symptoms of pregnancy safely. And then I have other days where I'm making TikTok videos on what is fiber and how to find a pregnancy safe fiber.
No, and I think to a large extent, as we're having these companies that really grow, like another good example is a Danish girlfriend actually who has a company called Clue, and she just recently stepped down as a CEO and have a co-CEO role now, or she has hired 2 other women to be co-CEOs of her company, because she really just wanted to deep dive into the product. As a product CEO myself, I completely align with that philosophy. And I think a lot of times people feel like they have to fill a certain role, but the role that we really have to fill in our own companies is where we add the most value. And
yes,
so that's really one of the biggest things that people have to realize in this space of foundership.
You have to put your ego aside. The title of CEO is fun to have, but what's more important than your title is really how you can best contribute to the success of the company. And if there's someone else that at that moment in your company's history can really change the trajectory in a way that's more positive than you can, then it really, you have to put that ego aside and do what's best for the company. So it's interesting. I think women are, I don't want to generalize, but I think it might be easier for women to do that. At least the women in my network who have experienced kind of setting aside, they've, reflected a little more and don't mind. It doesn't feel like a demotion. It feels like, oh, this is what's right. I'm happy to move aside.
No, and also to a large extent, I feel like sometimes I'm like, damn, I wish the day comes where we have enough resources to hire, a specialist for this and that and the other, because you spread yourself so thin that sometimes the things you really care about is after 11 p.m. at night, and it's not where you're the sharpest, but it's sort of like that's the time that gets allocated to it. But I agree with you. I think that there is a sensibility around, and probably to a large extent because of the way women look very much to the emotional well-being of the company as well as to themselves. There is some rather different ways of running a company, women versus men. But I think to a large extent that brings us to a much bigger conversation, right? Because I think when we're looking at the world today, I think there's a lot of calibration that sort of wants everybody to be the same, but we are fundamentally quite different. So
Yes.
let's just celebrate our differences instead of trying.
Hey, Halle, this is Michael over here. I see that you've expanded to the men's category. I thought that was fascinating doing research.
Yes.
But my big question I have for you, which I know you've been asked a few times since you are a digital health expert, entrepreneur, started at Apple Health, will we see Natalist go digital? I would see that as a huge opportunity. And if not, you can't say, but is that on your roadmap?
So that's a great question. And yeah, I mean, I get that question often just because of my background in digital health, but we probably won't become a digital services company in the near future. I think when you're a young startup and you're early, focus is really important. And for us, we have an enormous opportunity with our retail partners that we're working with and our existing customer base that continues to grow month over month. And so with just 7 people on the team, for us to start building out a software platform would be taking away from the opportunity cost of continuing to do what is working for us now and what our customers want. So I think if we were to do more in digital, it would be through partnerships. I also think there are a lot of tracking apps around helping people identify their fertile window and know when they're most likely to conceive, whether for conception or for contraception. So, and there are a lot of really great apps out there. And so for us to think that we could compete in software, you really can't be the best at both, physical products and software. I think we know that, right? We've seen Apple do software. We've seen Google do hardware. You really can't be the best at everything. And so, especially as a small team, for us, we really want to bring the best products to life. And when opportunities arise for us to do any sort of digital services, we'll probably just partner on those. And so we actually do have one partnership with Kindbody for a digital virtual consult. So we've worked with them to allow our customers to purchase a digital virtual consult so they can speak with a REI or a fertility nurse directly if they have any questions. And that was really important during COVID, as a lot of people were not wanting to go into a clinic and weren't feeling like they just wanted the answers. They didn't feel like, it was worth going into the clinic for the answers, but they wanted to at least talk with someone. And so that was something that we launched during COVID. And that was great because we're not going to build out right now a telemedicine platform and hire, the clinicians to serve that at this time. But through that partnership, we were able to still offer that to our customers while we left it in the hands of the experts at Kindbody to work on kind of that digital services piece of it.
No, that makes total sense. And I think it's interesting because all businesses were impacted by COVID, but I could imagine none more than the fertility business.
Absolutely. I mean, it was pretty chaotic. So the clinics all shut down at first, and I remember, a reporter reached out to me to talk about it because I actually had a round that was canceled in March. And, I wasn't too disturbed because I thought it was just going to be a month or two. It turned out that, I think the patients were vocal enough that they actually reversed that decision and, did open things back up in a way that they felt was safe. But, fertility care didn't turn off as soon as, COVID hit. So it was, hard to think about forcing people to shut off the opportunity to have a family for months and months and months, if not years. We just didn't know when if the end was in sight. So they actually reversed the governing body of fertility clinics, kind of reversed that memo and allowed the clinics to, safely open up with certain protocols that made sense.
No, yeah, I have several friends that have been through that same roller coaster ride during COVID, and it's definitely put an additional emotional toll on the road to motherhood.
Yes.
And I have a company where we reverse autoimmune disease, and one of the top 3 reasons that people come into the program is because they're infertile as a result of autoimmunity. So every year on Mother's Day, we give away free programs to women who can't get pregnant for that same reason.
Yeah.
So But one of the things that struck me in the beginning when you said I didn't know if the startup struggle was pointed at me, because I've definitely gone through enough. Could you share one of the things that you feel like will be beneficial for others who are considering going into startup land?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I thought I knew how difficult it would be to start a company, because I started Rock Health and it was extremely difficult. But it was a different kind of company. Starting a fund is very different from starting a venture-backed company. But I had insight into a lot of companies, and I will say, I now, when I talk to the founders that I've backed, I'm always like, you made it look so easy. And of course they do, right? For their funders, you don't want your investors to know how difficult it is. But I think anyone starting a company, if you're not coming into it with an absolute passion and drive for solving that problem, when you face the inevitable obstacles that you will face, and you will fight fires every single day. We joke about that a lot at Natalist, and our team has a pretty good spirit about it, because we're just like, what's going to be thrown at us today? The Suez Canal is going to be blocked, and all of our products are going to be stuck. You just kind of have to roll with it. But if you don't have that underlying passion for solving the problem, when you face those obstacles, it'll be just too easy to give up, and you will feel very defeated. So I think just making sure up front you're doing the stress test that this is what you want to be pouring your time and effort into, because there are a lot of opportunities for you as in your career. And so, think about, like, this is something you're going to be spending 50 hours at least a week on. You're going to spend many, many more hours thinking about it. And so having that passion and really caring about the problem that you're solving is really critical.
No, I totally hear you on that. We can see there's a lot of people that have sort of trickled into the room. So I'm just going to reset. This is the startup struggle with Tecco. Yes. We are in a position where, due to COVID, most of you don't see many people. So look to your right and look to your left, and connect with people here on Clubhouse. Don't just follow the moderators.
Yeah, actually, it looks like Natalist CEO Vernita is with us, so I just invited her to come up. I want to hear her thoughts on the struggle.
Exactly.
There she is. Hey, V.
Hello.
I mean, we joke around a lot, because we have very comical things happen. So one thing that happened that just, like, probably the one we laughed the most about was we had somehow switched two numbers in our phone number on one of our products. And so Vernita told me this, and she was like, oh man, we switched these two numbers, and it's not, so when people call us, it's not going to lead to us. And I was like, what number is it? And it was Life Alert, the company that you call when you can't get up.
You fall and you can't get up.
Yeah. It was just so
now you basically, depending on whether it's women or men that call in, direct them one place or the other.
Yeah, I mean, it's comical. I mean, you just run into these things all the time, and I think if you don't kind of bring some humor to it, you have to problem solve, but you also have to just not let it stress you out too much, because things are going to happen. Lots of things are going to happen every day.
Yeah. I mean, we always, when you said that, and I was just listening in, Halle, about the firefighting, I mean, that's just, we don't even like, in Slack, we don't even say the whole thing anymore. We just put the fire emoji or the firefighter emoji, because we just know this is a weekly thing.
That is funny. So, Vernita, if you should sort of take a look at the Tecco that you get to work with on an everyday basis, what would you say sort of stand out to you?
As far as, like, Halle and working with her?
You could literally pick anything, but I think we're sort of talking about the different sides of the founder here, right? And it sounds like the two of you work closely in Natalist, and I was just wondering how your view sort of was on the relationship.
Yeah, I think what Halle said earlier about, like, you just kind of have to have this gut check that this is what you want to do no matter what. And I think I see that in Halle every day. Like, she's just very, very passionate about what we're doing and who we're serving. And that passion is really, um, I mean, it's really contagious across the whole team. And so I think that, and then just the drive that she has, she is a bulldog. I don't know if you think that a positive term, but like she's going to get it done come hell or high water. And so I think that just that stick to itiveness and determination is something that really is a driver on our team, and I think are just characteristic of who she is.
I think that that's very saying, and I think generally the best founders are the ones that can get the everyone else to follow them on the mission, right? So it sounds like you're on a good path between you guys. We have Nils here on stage who has a question for you, Halle.
Yeah, hello everyone. Good morning. Super happy to be here. Just basically two questions, and I think it kind of refers to Michael's initial question about digitalization or the digital way, which you at the moment declined, or where you basically said that it's not our business model. But maybe in general, because of your experience, there would be one question regarding a very dry topic, compliance. So I think my initial question would be to you, do you think that at the moment, especially startups in the US are kind of aware about all these, let's say, dry compliance topics when it comes to like, in health to HIPAA, but also for EU residents to GDPR? I just want to figure basically, like, you know, people often, I think, very much focus on their core business. Yet, I think that these topics, especially when coming to Series B, Series C, so, you know, kind of more established companies facing, maybe also from a background as a VC or investor, face those questions. And yeah, I think my question would be, how urgent do you see is this topic, and how serious should you take it?
That's a good question. I think anybody working in healthcare needs to take regulators extremely seriously, not only to protect the consumer, which should be the number one goal, but also to protect your reputation. And so I think as a startup, it's you know, absolutely critical and necessary to ensure that your company is compliant with anything from, you know, privacy to, we face numerous medical device regulations and how we ship our products, how we track them, how we track customer complaints, et cetera. And so these things are put in place to protect the consumer. And so it is in our best interest as a community of leaders in healthcare to ensure that startups don't get a bad rap and we don't do any harm. We have our own kind of Hippocratic oath that we need to take as founders in digital health and healthcare to ensure that we're, you know, taking care of people. That's our goal. So I do think it's important. It is really expensive though, and these FDA lawyers, all of this regulation requires a level of expertise that's usually not found in the first, you know, probably 100 employees at a company. And so they're generally something that you outsource with the legal team, and really does add up. And so what I see is that companies just aren't able to prioritize it because they don't have the funds, or they haven't you know, thought about the resources required. It's one of the reasons that we aren't selling internationally. We just have a lot of market share yet here in the US at Natalist, but also, you know, the compliance, including, you know, GDPR, figuring all of that out is another investment that we're not quite ready to make. So I think that it's important for companies, founders, and leaders to know what they don't know, and be ready to pay handsomely to the experts to ensure that they are compliant. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, maybe as a follow-up question. So I think, you know, as a company, we kind of figured very early, because we team up with health tech companies, that we need a compliance officer, data protection officer, and what we figured, and basically why we're working on a paper right now and on audits, is basically the funny situation we are facing with US clients who are just operating in the US, that
It,
once you have EU residents, that you basically figure GDPR anyway. So if you have an EU customer or EU resident living in the US as your customer, that this may be, yeah, falls under
so
GDPR.
just Nils, for the sake of making the focus here on Halle, it's okay with a follow-up question, but I think the backstory might not be relevant here.
And just to point out, folks, this is being recorded as a podcast, so everything you say here is being recorded and will be published on MedStarter.tv. So if you are not okay with that, please make sure that you say something and we will take it out, whatever you said before. And otherwise, if you stay on the stage, we're going to assume that it's okay with you. Okay, that's it. I'm Alex Fair. I'm done speaking. Hey, Halle, good seeing you. And nice to meet you, Anita.
You as well.
Thanks, Alex.
Halle, I see that you're from Ohio. Your dad was an entrepreneur. I'd love to learn from you how that's. Do you feel like doing research on you? It seems like, has that made a big? What are some of those things that have made an impact on you? I would, one was what I just said, and then I think it seems like there's been others, but I would love to just hear what really helps keep your perspective and where you've gotten this entrepreneur's kind of spirit.
That's a good question. Yes, I grew up in Ohio, and I like to say I'm a proud first-generation college grad. That is something that is a big part of my story. And my father started. He didn't go to college, but he started a manufacturing plant in the plastic space. So they were doing injection plastic molding, a small firm that eventually went out of business after NAFTA kind of opened up and there was more global trade, and he couldn't, create these products at a competitive price. And so I kind of saw his business. I mean, they at the height had done pretty well. I think they had, like 100 employees and large brands like Rubbermaid and Dirt Devil, and it was a very exciting thing to see, my dad's company like doing really well, and then it literally, went bankrupt. And, I saw that in early high school. And so, I understood the risks. I've always understood the risks of being a founder, but I also, that it was very clear to me that I needed to have a college degree, and I needed to have kind of a backup plan, because my dad's backup plan was literally working at Walmart, going from, he had nothing else that he really could do without a manufacturing industry available anymore. And so he, that was it for him. And so making sure that I had transferable skills that I could take with me anywhere was really important. It's why I decided to study finance, because in every industry, if one industry closed to me, another would open. Having that base was really important to me. And so I think that did kind of early on play a role in me wanting. I'm actually very risk averse. I'm not really someone who takes on a lot of risk in any area of my life, which is funny, because I actually think risk averse founders are often the best, because they're very cautious about spend. They're not going to fly too high at the sun and then burn. That's really, they're not manic about it. And so I hope that's true for me as well. And that, I'm cautious, and I'm just a little, V might have some more thoughts on this, but I think I'm not into taking huge risks. Like, I want Natalist to be around for a very, very long time. So we're not going to just like blow through all of our cash.
So how was it to be out fundraising for a company, being on the other side of the table?
Yeah, it was. So we raised quite early in Natalist's, story, and we went out. It was a very unusual fundraise. I just reached out to the investors that I had worked with for many years, and they all invested, and we were able to fundraise very quickly, and so the whole thing was very unusual, but only because I had, the existing relationships with those investors.
It's because you were Halle Tecco, 100%. That's a great story. If everybody had that same story for fundraising, it'd be great.
That's why, I can't give fundraising advice as a founder.
Step one.
Can only
Step
give
one, become
fundraising
Halle
advice.
Tecco. Step two, call people you know.
I can only give advice as an investor. I can tell you, as an investor, what I have looked for in, companies when they pitch. But as a founder, I really haven't run it. But I will say this: I've worked with so many companies, and I've made thousands and thousands of intros to investors and helped companies think through their fundraising strategy. And what I've learned the most is that you really timing is key. I've seen companies that I'm just like, oh man, if they had waited 2 years to start this company, there's a lot of it that really is luck. A lot of it is unfortunately network. So having those, warm introductions. And so I always tell founders, before you even start your company, whatever you're an expert in, you need to make these relationships with those investors and let them begin to position you as the expert within your field and build that relationship, give them advice. They're learning as well. So if you can have this relationship kind of built up front, then when it is time for you to build your company, they look to you as the expert in XYZ. They're going to fund your company. So it's unfortunate that it's such a relationship-based industry because that leaves a lot of people out. It is very much still today an old boys club, an Ivy League boys club at that. So it's not the best, it's not the best trait of the VC world. But if you're able to, make those connections early up front, you don't see a lot of investment where the founder and the VC don't know each other. That's very uncommon.
Yeah, and I think also just I can only speak as a female entrepreneur, but I think at the end of the day that's what we do, right? We make connections, and that's how we sort of form also our opinion, because I think investor relations are seen as a financial transaction, but it's like a marriage. It's
oh yes.
It's if you have a rough patch, it's not sleeping on the couch, but it's definitely a strain on everything in running the business. So
yeah, and a good investor can be game changing for your company.
Yeah.
One of our lead investors, Aileen Lee from Cowboy, has been just the most helpful investor that I've ever worked with. She has made tangible impact on our business, and so it can be both, right? Like you can get into a marriage that's very fulfilling, or you can get into a marriage that crashes and burns. And I think a lot of people can't. Beggars can't be choosers, and so oftentimes, founders are kind of stuck in the position. Maybe they've raised a seed, and then 2 years later they're running out of cash, and they're not in the best position to fundraise, but they find someone who will, come in. I've seen VCs that just do total. They wipe out the cap table and basically take over the company. I mean, a lot of times you don't have that option. It's easy to say choose wisely, but you don't always get your choice. And so I think being strategic early on when you're going to fundraise is really critical. You want to fundraise at a point where you're not giving up so much of your company that you're giving up that control. But you want to fundraise where you have enough traction and proof points that you're going to get a valuation that's meaningful. So just finding that timing, I think, is important. And then that third piece of is this industry having a moment? Because if you just strike while the iron's hot and everybody's if you get in at the right time, the VCs are actively looking for companies in this space, and if you have one of the most appealing companies, then you have a better shot at getting invested. And you can't control that, but I've gotten lucky twice now on my timing.
No, that makes sense. One of the things that is big on you is that you are supporting female founders. How do you feel about these last couple of years? Do you feel like the market has changed? And if so, significantly enough, what's your opinion?
Well, the data shows that it is crawling, but crawling in the right direction. So I have mixed feelings about it. I think we need a more wholesale transformation of how capital is distributed, because the current system is leaving out really great entrepreneurs that just aren't getting the capital that would probably make a big difference in their business. But it is changing. So I don't know. I mean, I do see more. There are more funds focused on women founders. There are more venture capitalists that are women. So I do think that things are changing, but just not as fast as we want, and not for parity in funding anytime soon. It's not going to be in my professional lifetime.
And it's sad to say when you're still in your 30s to say not in my professional lifetime, right? Because yeah. I think to a large extent, when we're looking at what's happening in the female funded space, a lot of the funds, they simply don't have large enough amounts behind them. And that actually can be super problematic for the startup founders, because a lot of times one of the things about getting institutional investment is that the fund can follow up with additional funding rounds, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Mm-hmm.
But
yeah. And then the women, I've heard women that work at the larger funds that have tons of assets under management, that they feel like they can't be the only one investing in women, that they need to, like, if they just bring in a woman founder, that their partners will look at them like they're just investing in women. And so we also have kind of that problem. We need the large funds that have a lot of capital to make it a priority. Just diversifying their portfolio needs to be a priority across gender, race, and age. We don't talk about that a lot.
Oh yeah, there's
so much ageism in Silicon Valley. I mean, I've been quote unquote young both times that when I raised for Rock Health and when I raised at Natalist, but I see the bias against founders that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s.
Even when hiring, you bring a 50 or 60-year-old to the investor team, and they go, I would see someone with more energy in their early 30s, and you're like, yep. Well, we're looking at a specialist in their field. It yep. takes time to get there. It's not like 3 years out of MBA, you're going to be an expert in whatever field.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see in job descriptions, like, people will say, like, people will literally put young and hungry, and they'll like literally put that in there, and you're like, you legally cannot do that, but yeah, no, I think that's right. If within healthcare, having expertise is helpful. Obviously having fresh ideas is helpful too, but you can't, we can't expect that healthcare is going to change without listening to people who have years, if not decades, of experience. So yeah, we need to throw out all sorts of discrimination, because if we're really going to move the needle in healthcare, we need as many people working on these problems as possible.
Totally.
So important. So important. We have Roland. Do you have a question on this, Roland? We would love to include you. Thank you for your being here.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Halle, Alex, Meta, and Vernita. I actually had two questions for you, Halle. So the first question is, if you look at femtech today, specifically in the healthcare space, where do you see the biggest opportunities? And then after that, I'll ask you the second question.
Okay. Oh, that's a good question. There's so much. I mean, we're really just at the tip of the iceberg when it comes to innovating within women's health. I don't even know where to start with that, but I would say if men were the ones to physically have childbirth, we would be a lot farther in the care of mothers, and our, the mother mortality rates, the infant mortality rates would not be as high as they are today. So I think that's an area of prenatal care, neonatal care. I think those are, the numbers are dismal in the United States compared to other developed countries, especially outcomes for Black, Indigenous, Hispanic mothers. And why is that happening? I think that would be a huge opportunity. Another thing that I've been, thinking a lot about is as I get a little bit older is within the menopause space. I think that's an area where it's a major changes, hormonal changes in your body, and managing that life transition, I think, is another area that would be important. And I haven't really seen a lot of companies in that space either. So those are two, but I really think anywhere. I mean, fertility, I work in fertility, so, and I wish there were more people working in fertility. I think we have a ways to go when it comes to infertility, better diagnoses, bringing down the cost of fertility treatments. IVF is completely out of reach for the majority of Americans. The fact that it costs over $50,000 and you might not even come out of it with a child is preposterous. So anything that can help improve the outcomes or reduce the costs of fertility treatments is another huge opportunity.
Now that you talk about fertility, if your DMs were open, I'd be happy to introduce you to a very exciting startup that I came across yesterday, and happy to share that. My second question is, you talked about making visible those invisible great founders with great ideas. So the question with regards to that is, based on the experience you've had, what would be the metrics you suggest that need to be looked out for to give those founders more visibility?
Well, instead of what metrics would I look at, I think what norms do we have currently in the VC community that need to go? And one that stands out to me and has been discussed, this isn't my idea, but I'm part of this discussion, is a lot of VCs will not take a cold intro. And so it is nearly impossible for a founder to simply reach out to a VC. And there are famous articles out there about VCs saying, if you want to get in touch with me, you need to find a mutual, contact and get that warm intro. It's all about warm intros and network. And so that in itself means that only people within that VC's network is going to get on their radar. So let's take the stereotypical VC is a white male partner in his 40s, went to Stanford or Harvard, and that's a very small group of people in their network. And so if they're really just investing in their first and second networks, then they're missing out on people that might not fall into that circle but still have great companies. And the reason, for them, it's just they don't have a lot of time. I know as an angel investor, I don't have time to look through deals and answer emails from, cold emails. So I get it. But I think we need to get really creative about how these companies evaluate startups. So at Rock Health, for instance, we had a formal application process. We wanted to see everyone. We didn't just want to see the folks who knew us through our networks. We wanted to see every founder that had a great idea in digital health. And so we opened up an application. We had a huge team, maybe like 10 or 15 people that included founders, diverse founders, and our partners that would look through these applications and these they weren't applications, they were really startup pitches. So they'd look through these startup pitches and help identify the ones that we thought were most promising. And so through that, we were able to meet founders that we didn't have an existing connection with. And so I think that's one issue within the venture capital community that I think VCs could, with a little bit of effort, change. So I don't know what metrics I would look at. I think I would see that the makeup of the founders that VCs fund should look more like the U.S. I mean, is that hard? Shouldn't that be representative? I mean, that's what I would look at, is until we have, similar numbers, then there are certain groups that are disproportionately left out.
Thank you for that answer. I think you gave me the metric. So we should effectively measure the VCs by their behavioral change.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the effort that they put into ensuring that their own bias isn't leading their investment decisions.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
We have Timur. Timur, thank you for coming. Glad to have you here. Do you have a question for Halle?
Hey everyone, just joined, so maybe only listening now. Questions maybe later. Thank you.
Tomorrow. So, Halle, as we're going through this conversation, there's, of course, a lot of different aspects that pop up. Everything from, you know, how we sort of think about the world going into startup land, and then how we sort of maneuver once we are there, and then as we think about the next phase. But through all of that also comes sort of like the partnering side of this. And in your case, your partner is also your business partner in Tecco. And so how do you balance that side of this?
So like my husband?
I'm not like how you handle your husband necessarily, but more like,
well,
she's the CEO of that.
Right?
No, I think it's okay. So someone told me in business school, the most important decision you're going to make for your career is who you marry. And I hadn't really, it didn't really sink in until I started reflecting on my relationship and how it enabled me to do a lot of the things that I wanted to do. And I think I got lucky because I don't think I was young when I was engaged at 26 maybe, which is, it's young for San Francisco. But it's true. I think making sure that your partner is going to support you throughout the ups and downs of a career, and be with you when your salary might not be as high as it could be otherwise if you worked at a large company. Someone who's going to support you when you need to work late, occasionally, not always. And so, I've been really lucky, and my husband and I have both started companies. We started companies at the same time twice now, which is, we probably should have spaced it out a little bit better, but I think one of us gets the startup bug and then it rubs off on the other person. So that's just how it's been. And, he's my rock and supports me, personally, and gives me the space. And to be honest, we try to just not talk too much about work. We really try to not make work our entire lives. And so it's also helpful. I know I can go to him when I want to talk something out, but for the most part, I try to kind of compartmentalize work, especially now. I didn't do that at Rock Health. At Rock Health, I literally did Rock Health 24/7, and that was something that I, committed to not doing my second time around. And so, making sure that I'm leaving time in my life for things that are very important to me that I completely neglected when I was running Rock Health, and that's been very effective for me as a leader. I'm much more productive and efficient and just happier because I feel like my life is more balanced. I don't feel like my entire life is work. Like I really felt that when I was at Rock Health. I am a workaholic by nature, and I really love working. So if I'm given the opportunity to work a lot and I don't set those boundaries, I will work too much. And so having a child has been a great natural boundary. There's no way to ignore a crying baby. You have to, it demands attention, and it's for me, became a very meaningful priority in my life. So I think that what I said, that what someone told me in business school was absolutely true for me. And I think it is true for most people, is making sure that if you do, end up with a life partner, that you're choosing wisely, and it's someone who knows your ambitions and your goals and promises to support you throughout, your entire life together. And there is a gender dynamic that comes into play as well. During COVID, I saw many of my friends forced to their career was forced to take a back seat because all of a sudden they didn't have childcare. And when they didn't have childcare, because men make more than women, their jobs were more important. And so the women were the one that had to take on the additional childcare because their jobs weren't as important because they weren't making as much money. And this is a vicious cycle that, really was amplified during COVID. Fortunately, it didn't impact me as much because I still had childcare, but it was something that happened to a lot of women.
Yeah, don't get me started on that topic. I think that we have in the sort of women's arena made a lot of progress, and then COVID set us back 50 years to some extent.
It absolutely did.
Bad.
It really did.
But,
yeah.
So it was funny because as we were talking about starting companies with like babies and making sure that it's sort of like the marriage, made me think that you have two life partners at the moment. You have your husband at home, and then you have Anita at work, right? And
yes.
It sounds like you found a good boundary and balance between the two worlds, and have fun on both sides. So that's awesome.
I do. I will say it's easier. Anyone who has been in the trenches of a startup, whether founder or just early employee, when when that chapter closes, you can write a book. You can write a book of everything that you would have done differently. I mean, there are just so many lessons that you can only learn by doing or seeing. And so I think you kind of go into it. I reflected for a long time on my experience at Rock Health and what I wanted to do differently and what were the priorities for me moving forward before I jumped into something else. And so that was, that was key for me to kind of set that framework for myself that, okay, I'm going to do this again. I know it's going to be really intense. Here are the things that are really important to me as a leader. And here's the mistake I don't want to make again, because you end up being, this is true for relationships too. You end up being you become like a character of yourself. And so it's hard to change midstream certain expectations that your team has of you. And so being able to kind of wipe the slate clean and have a new experience, whether that's a new job, if you're someone who's, having a career change, or if you're starting a new company, I think it's really important in between those two experiences to really reflect on what you learned and what you want to do better, because that's the best time for you to make those changes intentionally before you just go back into old habits.
Halle, is there a practice you do every day to kind of keep in touch with yourself? Is there anything that you found really helpful to keep you really on track?
I wish there was. There's not. I will say during COVID, I started doing a lot of walking meetings. That was something that became part of my routine. I just realized that I was sitting in front of my computer all day, and I felt better when I kind of started the day off with a walk. So that was, something that I hope to continue even beyond COVID when I'm back in the office, is to just, have a good walk and talk. I have a green tea every morning. I would say that's probably as deep of a practice as I get on a daily basis, is having that tea that helps me wake up.
Nice.
So not a big coffee drinker?
I don't drink coffee. No, I'm too sensitive to caffeine. I've
never learned to, and generally, so I'm originally from Denmark, and in Denmark that's a disability, because apparently it's the country in the world where you drink the most coffee. but I've overcome my disability when it comes to that. I still make many mistakes during the day, and hopefully, like you said, you reflect in between on these issues. And I think everyone, whether it's startup land or whether it's chronic disease or wherever it is, we all have sort of our baggage with us. And sometimes all of those learnings will land you in a place where I know exactly what to do right now. And other times it will sort of give you a dwarfed look. But at the end of the day, the accumulation of all of it is what makes you, and it makes you the capable navigator in this space, right? I know we only have a couple of minutes left. Is there anything that you feel like it would be great to leave the audience with when it comes to how, or maybe even you and Vanita and your explorations with Natalist?
Well, I don't have anything specifically, but I will say, Vernita and I work very closely every day on our mission to bring, better products and experiences to families that are trying. So if anyone out there is trying to build a family or already pregnant, we'd love to support you on that journey. So please reach out to either of us. And we're always looking for great partners in the space. So if you have a company in the space, we're always really excited about getting creative about ways we can work together and support each other's goals.
I think that's the perfect way to end. I think generally we started out right before you joined us, Halle, about talking about how asking for help is an essential learning as a startup founder. And I think in this particular case, when it comes to fertility, it really is about asking for help and asking for help as early as possible. And having Vanita and Halle offer this is beautiful. And so thank you both, and thank everyone in the audience for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, Halle. Thank you, Vernita.
And on the hour, so perfect.